So this guy said that the virgin birth is true. He says that the virgin birth actually happened of Jesus. But was Mary a perpetual virgin? Did she stay a virgin? Yeah, sure. When Jesus was conceived and when the birth happened, she was a virgin. But what about the other children? What about Jesus' 4 brothers? What about Jesus' sisters? Jesus had 4 brothers and 2 sisters. What about them?
Can be seen in the Gospel of John, the Acts of the Apostles, and St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians and Galatians, as each reference the brothers of Jesus.
So John 7:3, Acts 1:13, Galatians 1:19, and 1 Corinthians 9:5. All the Gospels talk about his brothers. There's 2 of them that specifically list his names. Joses, Jude, Simon, and James the Just. And then just 2 sisters, but there may be more sisters. So Joses, Jude, Simon, and James the Just. James the Just is going to carry the Christian church on. James the Just is one of the original, the rock is going to be, Peter? Peter is supposed to be the rock. Peter and John and James were the original founding fathers of Christianity. They kept Jesus' ministry alive. Paul was out there and just, doing whatever Paul was doing. But the original founding fathers of Christianity, after Jesus was crucified, his brother picked up the cross and carried the cross himself. James the Just is actually going to get crucified in 62 CE. So James the Just picks up the cross of Jesus, and he himself gets crucified 62 by Nero, by the famous Nero. Like, how are we going to ignore all this stuff? This is really important because what did James actually believe? What did Peter actually believe? What did John actually believe? They were the original founding fathers of the Christian church.
Clearly, Jesus had some biological relatives. And the Catholic Church doesn't negate that. We just don't accept that these children are the offspring of Mary. When we look to the actual description of these so-called brothers of Jesus...
Not the offspring of Mary. What are you going to say to me now? I'm just going to... Paul was a Pharisee? I didn't know that. Paul was a Pharisee. And then you have, blindness. You can't just take dirt and spit into dirt and rub it into people's eyes. There's gene therapy. You could use stem cells and gene therapy. So there's, modern medicine. Science is trying to cure blindness. Then we have mythology. When it comes to the historical Jesus, if you're not talking about the historical Jesus, you're not talking about Jesus at all. You're speaking lies. You're speaking mythology. You're speaking a bunch of bullshit. Historical Jesus is worthy to believe in and to champion and to admire. My God, Jesus. So Jesus, we know, was a Jew. We know that Jesus, the Jew, was baptized by John the Baptist. Does that make John the Baptist superior? And then does that mean Jesus was being cleansed of his sins? How did God have sins? Okay, and then Jesus was crucified by, Pontius Pilate and by the Romans. Crucifixion is a state sanction. It was sedition. They were afraid that his movement was going to grow into this big thing, and they were afraid that Jesus would become too powerful. They were afraid that Jesus would become too powerful, and then he would make himself king. That's what they were afraid of. So they crucified him. The Romans killed Jesus. We know that historically. He was a Jew. We know that historically. He was baptized by John the Baptist. Historically, we know that. We don't know much more, but we can get a lot from those 3 pieces of information. Those 3 key points. We can discern a lot from those 3 things.
It's important to note that no one is ever described as the son of Mary, whereas family lineage is common in other places in the Gospels, as in the sons of Zebedee. These brothers are given no further detail. Of course, this assumes that the word brother actually means what we mean by brother, which is not a guarantee. In the Semitic world, calling someone a brother could be a catch-all for many types of relationships.
Oh my God, apologetics. So I'm supposed to believe that he caught, a fish and there was a 4 drachma coin in the fish's mouth and you could pay your taxes, right? Hey, sorry, tax man, I don't have money right now. Let me go fishing because God is telling me there's going to be a 4 drachma coin in the guy's mouth. Oh, I'm just going to go ahead and raise this guy from the dead 3 days later after rigor mortis, sets in, after bacteria and the Jesus transfigured into Elijah and Moses. He walked on water cured leprosy, and cured the blind guy, and caused the death of 2,000 pigs, created 4,000 loaves of bread out of thin air. You believe all that bullshit? Some people might say, oh, well, you just got your information from a book. You know, every piece of information that we know about Jesus came from a book. That's all we know are the Gospels, Paul's letters, Josephus, Tacitus. That's all we know. Just people that wrote crap in books. That's all we know about this, supposed guy, Jesus. So if you want to say, oh, your criticism comes from a book, your character came out of a book.
From stepbrother to cousin to even uncle. In the book of Genesis, for example, Abraham uses the Hebrew word for brother to greet Lot, even though he is in fact his uncle. As if that weren't ambiguous enough, we see in the Gospel of Matthew that two of his disciples, James and Joseph, are at one point referred to as his brothers, but are later described as the sons of a different Mary entirely. All of this helps to understand the scene from John 19, in which Jesus entrusts his mother to the beloved disciple while on the cross. If the Mary, the mother of Jesus, did have other children, Jesus would have had no need to make sure that his mother was cared for after his death, and this scene would make...
Okay, so the Lazarus effect, with the paddles, okay, you could bring somebody back to life, but you'd have to do it instantaneous. As soon as their heart gives out, you got to shock them. You got to put the paddles. What are those paddles called? You got to, the Lazarus effect. That's the only way. The Talpiot tomb, okay, there's some archaeological evidence. But you sons of bitches who believe in miracles and all the bullshit, you probably won't even believe in the Talpiot tomb. So you got archaeological evidence that Jesus actually existed. But you're going to ignore it? So you're going to believe a bunch of dumb bullshit and then be the most skeptical assholes when it comes to real life, true stuff, objective stuff? Give me a fucking break, man.